where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
Now, when it comes to Donald Trump and his administration, I feel I must inform you that this is not, I'm not MAGA, nor am I particularly claiming that he's a bigot or racist. But when it comes down to what's going on now, a renaissance or revolution, and this idea of what's taking place and what can take place. This idea of this, what's happening now, it is disappointing, I would say, for many of the media channels that were once valuable sources of information, and that exposed a lot of corruption, and happened to support MAGA, and them being able to ignore so much of what's going on in terms of the idea of really placing loyalty to this administration over particularly the general good of society, I would say. And it's disappointing because it's just whether I agree with a lot of what was, the movement or not, I think it was an understanding of, okay, maybe this would be a renaissance, and maybe this would be for the general working population, or, lead to a better life for people in general. And it does appear that you guys, a lot of media outlets, they weren't anti-establishment, they were just anti-democrat in a lot of ways, and that right there, I think it was just, to see that was just like or to kind of come to that understanding, and Whitney Webb is a journalist who was kind of like on the front lines in terms of exposing a lot of this stuff, and I think Trump signed something to where he was coming out of the World Health Organization, and he was taking us out of the World Health Organization, and Whitney tweeted out like, okay, well, last time he did this last time too, but he put us in like some kind of Bill Gates, some kind of Bill Gates funded society that essentially wanted the same thing, right? So it was just like, make sure that this doesn't happen again, though. Like, that's how I took it. But she was slandered and attacked by, or she was just slandered, as kind of a black pill pusher, right? So someone who has no hope, and someone who's hopeless, and they want to only spread their hopelessness. And somebody, it was just like, seeing that was just I think that right there really put it in the put the nails in the coffin for a lot of people, for me, in terms of having an understanding that there is a subset of people that weren't, like I said before, they weren't anti-establishment, they were just anti-democrat, and this idea of or they were just pro-Trump, and that wasn't necessarily like they weren't anti-establishment at all. And that's very much like kind of a, it's disappointing to see. And like I said, I don't think this is necessarily like powerful to keep this conversation up about, this is, to keep the conversation revolving around the idea of the race dynamic, I think, is it has a play, but I think if we talk about economics in terms of what happens economically, I think we'll have more of an understanding of a more powerful understanding of what's happening at play and how we can change things for the future. And I think, and that right, I think would certainly solve any type of a lot of the what happens in that particular dynamic, right? So I think race will be solved in that particular way, shape, or form in terms of what the any type of disparities or am I saying that right? Disparages, I'll say, right? And now, in particular, I'm gonna mention just two things right now, and I think the first one's gonna maybe lead me on a bit of a rant, or the second one's gonna lead me on a bit of a rant. But the idea of the first portrayal, I feel like, was these channels and their silence around the idea of the Trump coin, right? And that right there was, I mean, it's very, it's a pretty solid argument to just say that this is just an evolved pyramid scheme, right? So people don't get anything tangible, and the money that's made through this is simply making it based on someone after you buying the coin for more than you purchased it, right? So it's not really there's a lot of people who are like kind of worried about this idea of our sitting president mentioning and opening up a Trump coin, and that's or a coin in any way, shape, or form. There's a lot of, a scam, like regardless of whether it's legal or not, it's a scam, and I think a lot of people, even if you are holding out some kind of judgment on this particular, coin, I think it's important for you to voice and address the idea of where this could go in what it looks like to you. Your followers, the people who view you, your viewers have that understanding of, you speak for in a lot of situations, you speak to help them. And this is, that was kind of the first thing. And the second thing is like the idea of to ignore kind of I guess I think there's a lot of shenanigans with Elon right now, but I think sending young adults to the Treasury Department, that is something that that's now I really want to get this. I really want people to understand something. Like the young adults that Elon sent apparently have some kind of they're savants or geniuses in whatever particular field, right? And I want to make sure, because I feel like that's understated by a lot of the media that's more so on the left, right? So we're not really talking about the idea of them being, this is, these are outstanding in one shape or way, right? And I think when we think about the future, we have to think about like when it comes down to like a lot of movies about kind of starship civilizations and stuff. It's just like, a lot of it's just like kids will have as much knowledge as doctors today have, like that is something that's common, and I think we have to kind of move towards that in a lot of different ways. And giving these guys platforms and kind of realizing that their lives are going to be different, and helping them become better than we are at our age is going to be really something that I think is important. But and But in terms of this idea of having young adults in the Department of Treasury, this is first off, Elon himself, like this whole like H-1B visa thing that happened where he literally took someone's check mark, like the Treasury Department, this is your personal information with a lot of this stuff. Like this is not the stability of, you know, what this isn't somebody who needs to be entrusted with anybody's personal data without some kind of like very stringent understanding, right? Because that is wild to me. This guy literally, like, when it comes down to the ability to take someone's check mark for disagreeing with you openly on this platform that's supposedly free speech, and you take the check, that is worried. That is, you need to be worried about that. That is not something to be quiet about. That is not something to not say anything about. For them to now have access to your personal information, that's a problem in itself. And I mean, it can, like, there's like I that is probably like one of the biggest things that I'd say why I wouldn't want Elon in particular. But in terms of getting back to the idea of young adults having access to the idea of the Department of Treasury, I think like I said, they can be exceptional in a lot of different ways, but time itself is a test. And I think that is that's something that can't be ignored, right? So we can't really test we can't say anything about the test of resiliency for these particular young adults in any way, shape, or form, in any test that gives any merit, that yields any merit, right? Because we don't know, right? So the test of time in itself, it gives us a lot of it. It gives us, by taking that test, it gives us, of course, experience and interactions, right? Interactions between people, real people. Because the idea of, having access to the Treasury Department, you have access to real people. Real people can't be simply deduced to numbers in any way, shape, or form. And when you do that, it's a very dangerous game. A game that could easily lead to the dehumanization of mass groups of people. And I like I said, I think they may certainly have valuable insights on how to better and make things more efficient. That can certainly be the case. In terms of this whole like idea of like Elon taking over and things like that, let me tell you something. If you wanted to audit anybody, it'd be the Pentagon. It would be the Army. Ironically, those would be the same people that would stick a gun in Elon's face and tell him to stop. And I think that idea of like the idea of this guy going in and not addressing the inflated military budget, that is, I mean, this is it's laughable in so many different ways. But the idea of what happens here with these like young adults, like the efficiencies that they may be able to catch on to, I think that's a factor, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. But when it comes down to the idea of them acting alone and them having access to the stuff, I think there needs to be some very serious hand-holding with this particular situation, because this is, they haven't had this experience yet, right? In terms of being like exposed to this amount of data or this type of data before. And also like the idea of when it comes down to people who are able to be like psychologically manipulated, I think we have to have an understanding that grows beyond whether these people have been exceptional or not in their particular, in whatever ways that they've proven themselves. But this is like this idea of young adults going into the treasury and having access to people. That's worrisome. That's very you don't do that, and that right there is like, like I said before, like it's a very big problem. I am not hopeful about like Elon being the good billionaire that's gonna go against the bad billionaire. I am not hopeful about that standpoint at all. Like, the good billionaire wants to develop chips to put in your brain, and it's like this guy is like this guy's like a Reddit incel with money. Like, that is, I'm gonna be like, it's pretty bad, but I feel like that's like the analogy I think sticks, and I think it's something like, like acting the way you act with is, I think that wouldn't necessarily be a problem for everyday people who don't have exorbitant amounts of money and power, and I think that's going to happen. We gotta, like, that's not something, that's a serious problem in itself. Conspiracy mind, going into conspiracy land. Did the uppers just simply shake hands and say, hey, look, you do whatever you want, outside of the military budget, outside of that, you do what you want, and as long as we got our golden parachutes, as long as we kind of get people to let's say for instance move to this new digital form of currency, to where, let's say, they decide to speak out against us, we can shut their entire, like, we can freeze their entire bank account pretty easily in that way, shape, or form. I think that's very worrisome in general, but like I said, even without the shutting my conspiracy mind off, I would be like, hey, look, this is like obviously a problem, and I think it's important because before Trump took his first term, and I think there's a point to be made here, because he mentioned how the Republicans went, kind of groveling to and begging the globalist Koch brothers for money in their campaigns, and that was, I think, a statement. But now everyone's going to Mar-a-Lago, like all the billionaires and all the people who, who would essentially be the global elite, are going to Mar-a-Lago, and it can be assumed that be assumed that Trump he's become the globalist, and the quote unquote new media, a lot of them are silent about this, and it's, like I said, it's disappointing, and it's it's I think a lot of them, their credibility has been shot in my eyes with a lot of them, but also, like, I gotta say, I commend them for their loyalty, right? So, like, that they never, a lot of them never, like, blanket claimed that they were anti-establishment. But they did blanket claim that they did make the claim that they were pro-Trump, like, so that idea of being loyal, that's I think that gives them, that they have a bit of respect for their loyalty. They'll go down with this sinking ship until the soldiers bust down their doors and make them get up and go to war. Like like a lot of these guys are, they'll. It's been proven that they don't really care about a lot of their viewers. They care about what Trump thinks about them, what the Republican Party thinks about them staying in line, and I think that's I think if they just come out and simply make that known, I think it'd be a lot easier on their people that rely on them, and people that may lose, that could very much lose money with investing in Trump coin, and believing that Elon Musk is the good billionaire in some way, shape, or form, and not the kid having a hissy fit when he doesn't get his way. And this idea of also the in terms of the conspiracy mind going on, Elon Musk already kind of he set the groundwork for the social credit score on Twitter, if I remember correctly. Like after this whole H-1B visa, he's like, hey, we need to have more positive content. And he there's I kid you not, I hope I'm not, if I'm mistaken, please let me know in the comments, but I believe this man put on a social credit score for the entire, the fact that this is just how do you ignore that? Or how do you kind of not make that talking point? I think I've seen channels start to kind of go at Elon he's separate from Trump, he's like Trump's fall guy right now. But I think this idea of a social credit score, that is insane. That is insane. But also people who's the conspiracy guy? I forget his name, but it was the fact that he puts I heard a clip of I gotta find his name. I got to. Alex Jones. So this Elon wants to put a brain chip in your head, and that is probably the most arch villain type of behavior I think I've ever heard. And this guy Alex Jones, he gets on, he tells his audience, he's he's having some kind of conversation, I forget what, but he says, oh, I actually talked to somebody with a brain chip and they had a disability and it helped. And I was what? Are you serious right now? I think the idea of that being even a conversation that Alex Jones had, I am baffled. I am baffled that could even come out of Alex Jones's mouth, but I mean it did, and that was I think I'm I think it's a very serious situation. It's very dire in terms of where we're at right now as a society. But that was pretty funny because it's just do you hear yourself talk? What do you think? The past, in the past, Alex Jones would say to you now. What do you think that the past, Rogan would say to you now? You know what I'm saying? The turn that's been taken for a lot of these people is tremendous, and I think we really need to understand that. Being pro-Trump has become more important to these people than being anti-establishment in a lot of ways. And with that being said, like I do not believe that the Democrat politicians are innocent bystanders in this, and they're just helpless politicians being dragged by the wind. Like I said, this idea of Elon not targeting the military budget in any way says that, hey, like, I mean, these are the, like I said, these are the same people who would, like, they would be very likely to just simply kill him. You know, like that was like you like, what are you doing? What are you like, you know, like having that understanding of like, you know, like, what are you doing? And I could be wrong. Maybe he'll go into the military budget. Maybe he's like saving, you know, maybe he's saving that for later. But I mean, you're not serious about hacking any budget and, you know, leaving the military alone. I mean, and let's not forget, this guy's a contractor. He is an actual government like most of his money is through the government, aka your money, your taxpayer money going to Elon. That is how he's a billionaire. That is how he's made his money. He is like this idea of, you know, this is you know, this guy is some kind of like, you know, he's a hardworking billionaire. He is not. He just there's, in terms of, there's a lot of things out there that point to this guy being a complete fraud, and I think that's very, very worrisome as well. Even with the betrayal of, like, kind of, you know, the first two things, I think the betrayal of, you know, not mentioning the fact that Elon very likely, you know, lied about being good at video games, right? And paid someone to play his game and get his account boosted, essentially. That right there, I think, is very low in terms of, it's like from kind of surface level, like you don't really think much about that. Like, okay, cool. Well, he lied about that. That's not a big deal. But you have to think about this, because he had the opportunity to simply tell the truth and relate to a lot of people, right? He chose not to do that. He chose not to relate to people, everyday people. He chose to be viewed as, and trick people into this particular image of him being better than them at video games, right? But that is very worrisome when you think about it, because it's just like, you're hearing a lot of things and you're thinking like, okay, these are just Democrats kind of like trying to stick a knife in and wherever they can. But a lot of this stuff is starting to get really worrisome when you think about like, oh, this guy's, he's not trying to relate to people. He is trying to be superior to people, and that is very worrisome with a lot of this stuff. And I mean, not even going in like this, and that isn't even everything. That's what's so great, and that isn't even everything. You know, like that's crazy. But going back to the idea of Democratic politicians, if you identify, you know, as a Democrat in any way, shape, or form, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, our politicians, like our poor, helpless politicians, while Elon sends like some kind of like 20 something, you know, some kind of like team of like 20s, like, you know, young adults, and I'm just like, yeah, this is this is like, I want you guys to understand something. At best, these guys are standing aside and hoping that chaos ensues and that the country will run back to whatever puppet that they put in place. Okay? And that is at best. When it comes down to this particular dynamic between Democrats and Republicans, I've heard the analogy that it's simply two parents that have been separated, and when you don't like one parent, they say, hey, we'll go to the other parent then. And that's really very accurate, because it's just like, they're not going to try and, like, this idea of the disaster Trump could cause with this administration is directly related to the amount of things that they can get away with when they are next in power, when and if they stand up next in power. That is it. If you think that there is going to be some kind of presidential candidate that's going to come and save us all, and you're on the anti-Trump side, and no, it's not. You're going to be just I mean, really hoping that this, like, administration pulls through and does something, like, really for the common people. But one thing I'll tell you is this idea of there is no there is no Democrat politician that's going to be what the MAGA supporters think that Trump is. There is not, like, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And if you believe that, I'm sorry to say that you have been fooled. You have been effectively fooled. And when it comes down to this particular segment, I really want people to understand that there's a difference between a renaissance and a revolution. And I would like to convince you that a renaissance isn't going to be possible through these candidates that are presented to us. They're not going to be possible for any one candidate in particular, right? So our local politicians, I think, should be more important than the president in general, but in terms of for the individual in society. But I want you guys to understand that this is, whatever happens, the government is essentially an umbrella over your head, and you're hoping that it protects you from, the very real comet that can come and hit this planet at any time. Like, that's what the government is. That's how it functions. And I want you guys to realize that you have to respond to whatever the situation may be. That is going to be, for a lot of you guys, you need to understand that you suffering more is not a accurate way to respond to for a politician that you don't like. Start to think about what happens and what you'll do to respond and not react, right, by just screaming very loudly. These guys are, like I said, the Democrats are essentially just hoping that you go to them next in terms of when they see chaos and step to the side. And I want you guys to focus on the idea of creating a society that can survive for thousands of years. What does that look like? And start to move toward that particular society when you think about society as a whole, right? So connect with your neighbors, more, but also the idea of what you can create that lasts thousands of years. Because I'd hate to tell people who believe we do have it. We don't. We don't have it right now. And I really hope we do have that in the future.